You've been wanting to start a new chapter in your life, but you still haven't done it yet. Why? We can visualize this here. This is you, stuck, going around in circles, and this is where you want to be. You want to be working on your goals and achieving them. But you may be stuck with things like decision paralysis. You can't commit on which option to pick. You get overwhelmed when you do pick an option about where to start, so you start procrastinating, and then you experience fear of failure. So we're going to go over how you can get from this state of mind to over here, where you're actively working on your goals. Now, this is me about 10 years ago, and it was taken while I was at work in my corporate job. I can tell because this is my work lanyard here. I don't know why on earth I would take a selfie like this, because I do not look in a good way. I was this character here, really, really stuck. And I felt trapped, desperately wanting to change, but I just couldn't do it for the following reasons. The problems. I was totally unclear about exactly the direction I wanted to go in, and therefore committing to a decision was really difficult because I'd be scared about making the wrong one. I was stuck in research mode. I constantly researched new ideas, especially with social media popping on the scene. I chased these different business ideas constantly. Then when I did pick one, I'd look at how to do it and I'd get overwhelmed by the instruction and then want to get away from it. So I'd make excuses and start procrastinating. When I did make some traction, some kind of life setback would hit me and then it would completely derail me, so I wouldn't be able to make any progress. Even when I did make it past a few months, I just had no consistency. So I just had a constant stream of half-finished projects. It felt like this. When I fixed one thing, something else would break, and it was really, really frustrating. So I'm going to take you through a 4-stage system that helped me resolve this. I call it the Darc system, and it has these 4 stages in it. So this video will be a structured guide. It'll be everything you need to successfully start your next chapter with a high likelihood of success. You will need each of these stages. If you skip, be warned. Now, stage 4 in particular is really critical, and it actually relies on the previous 3 stages. A lot of people jump to consistency because that's what they want. But if you do, because it relies on the previous ones, you will probably find it really difficult. Not following this could easily cost you years of your life. And as we go through this, you'll probably see points in your life where you've made a lot of these mistakes. It'll be really obvious that you cannot break this cycle if you actually want to start achieving some of your long-term goals. Now, this is a process I've used successfully with hundreds of clients. I'm only sharing it now because I needed to make sure it actually works with real people, not just myself. So these are some screenshots from testimonials and case studies that I've done with lots of past clients, and you can check these out on my website. I'll give you a link in a minute. So just to give you an idea, this is a client I worked with, Joe, who was working in a pretty well-paid job, but lacked direction and purpose. Really suffered from fear of failure and just was not making any progress whatsoever. He had a dream of connecting people and kind of connecting cultures as well. But he was stuck for over 5 years. He actually started a YouTube channel. It was just dormant. Now, I actually had this problem for over 10 years and eventually broke it. Likewise, same with Joe. He started from 0 and we eventually got him. This was on TikTok, I think. And now he is connecting and bringing joy to people's lives, connecting cultures through food, and earning an income from it. Really living the dream. He is now getting views like this and has well over 140,000 followers on social media. And this is another client, Anne. She rapidly climbed the corporate ladder but felt really unfulfilled and was all work and no play. And now she's landed her dream job working in climate tech and is proud to be an artist, which she does in her spare time, and runs some small local exhibitions, which is really, really great to see and hear. So you can find some of these stories on my website here, jameslim.me. Okay, warning, this video is going to be a deep dive. It's not about 5 tips to solve your life. That is just not going to work. This is going to be really comprehensive. I don't want to waste your time. So if you're not interested in all of this, you might as well leave the video now. Now at the end, I'll be going over some details about a free assessment I've built that will help you figure out what areas you need to work on to maximize the chances that you'll be successful along your journey. Okay, let's get going with the Darc system. Number 1, direction. It's all about knowing where you are heading and figuring out where this needs to be. We will go through this. Number 2, action. The ability to get started. A lot of people struggle on making those first few steps, so we'll go through that. Number 3 is all about resilience, getting back on track after some kind of setback. And 4 is consistency, showing up no matter what. Without direction, you will have shiny object syndrome with no clear direction. You'll just jump on various thing to thing. Without action, you won't be able to execute and you will have nothing to show. Without resilience, you'll keep falling off track. Even when you make progress, you'll fall off track and you'll just leave it for 6 months. And without consistency, you'll just have a pile of half-finished projects. I've been through all of these, right? Why does this all matter? Well, look at these two images. What do you want to create? Big moves in life require a lot. It requires a lot of energy, time, and emotion. There are many ways for things to go wrong. Now, if you want to build something small and you just want to get on with life, more like a mud hut, then you don't need to probably worry about these things. But if you're trying to build something big and meaningful and ambitious in your life, it works much better when you've got a framework and a structure to follow, because there are so many things to go wrong. So this will be a systematic approach that will help get you there. And plus, if you do it this way, it can actually make the journey more possible and fun at the same time. So there are going to be 12 key concepts here, and I will go through each of those. So 3 in each: direction, action, resilience, and consistency. You can skip ahead. Hopefully I'll have the chapters all put in this video later. But the first time round, I would watch this, and you can watch it in fast speed if you want. And I also include 4 bonus common mistakes and traps here. So stage 1, establishing direction. Without a clear direction, it doesn't matter how hard you work. You'll be constantly chasing your tail. I have been here. How to spot if this is a problem for you. So the symptoms. So symptom 1 is you have goals you work toward, but they don't feel fulfilling or meaningful. Number 2, constantly chasing new ideas. So someone will suggest something, you see something on social media, and then you'll start researching about it, and then you'll get excited, and then you'll drop it in a few weeks. Number 3, you're constantly questioning what you should do next. Now, I'll give you a quick example. I had a client of mine, Jodie. She was stuck in corporate life and struggling with only short vacations. And she had 15 years of dreaming of doing something else. But what? That was the big question for her. So we were trying to get her over here, but we didn't know where that would be. And she definitely didn't know. So we'll come back to her a bit later. Now, quick reflection. Now, this will help you figure out whether you need to focus on this area. Do you know where you'd like to see yourself in the future? Do you feel fulfilled on your current trajectory? Are you busy, constantly busy with work and life, but there's a feeling of emptiness? These are signs that you may need to work on it. The goal here is to find your direction. I'm going to introduce you first to one of these bonuses, a mental trap, which I call the copy-paste trap. Now, imagine trying to hear yourself think with all of this stuff going on the street. Transfer that to thinking about your direction. How do you expect to find your direction with all of this stuff going on? Now, we can transfer this metaphorically to this: social media, colleagues, society, family, and friends. All telling you, all pitching in about what you should do with your life and what you should do with your direction. It's extremely difficult. It feels like this. You've got this compass that you're trying to listen to, but there's magnets all around pulling you away from it. Yeah, so we've got society, culture, school, social media, friends, family, colleagues. Some of them want the best for you, but it pulls away from your compass. Now, there's a symptom I like to track, and it's the feeling of what you should do. If you feel that, this could be the issue. It's sometimes like someone trying to present a trainer to you, and they're telling you it's the best trainer to wear. They're pushing this particular one, maybe because they like it or they believe in it. They've not even checked your foot and not even checked your size. They want you to wear this particular trainer. And so you don't know what to think. You think, oh, okay, I think that might be a good thing to do. You know, maybe you're not even using it for running. Maybe you're using it for the gym or dancing, right? It might not be the most appropriate shoe. So we have to find a way to check your own fit. We need a way to create some kind of force field around this, like a protection barrier against all of this, so you can gain the true reading of your compass. It's not easy though, because we have to learn how to read a really weak signal inside your compass and maintain this force field around you. So how do you avoid falling into this copy-paste trap and find your own direction? So number 1, we need to create a fairly strong signal here. No more looking outside. We need to look within. This is a side note. Why do we look outside so much? Well, it's often because we want a quick answer. We want someone else to tell us what we should, which direction to go in. It's a lot easier because trying to figure out what it is for yourself is really difficult. Yeah, so like I said here, it is a difficult exercise, especially if you're tuned to external noise about what you've been told growing up and through education, family, society. We have to retune ourselves. It's about defining what truly matters to you, and this is about your values, which we'll come on to next. Now, values act as your compass. It's like choosing a holiday destination. If you go to one of these and you start picking your filters about where you want to head to, popular filters, and you want an ocean view, this is the equivalent of your values, but rather than holiday destinations, this is about your life. It helps filter out distractions and shiny objects. There are quite a few exercises to help you figure this out, but it's not easy. Now, back to Jodie. So some of her values here were nature, wild animals, people, and communication. So we knew that was where we were aiming for. There's a hint here in this picture about what are her values, and we can see an elephant up here. So we did a lot of work trying to figure out what mattered to her the most, and we came up with a very, very strong list of values, and it ultimately ended up in her making a massive transformation from a corporate comms role in a fairly big energy firm, and to this now working out here. And you can have a quick look at this, take a pause, see all of her achievements over the last couple of years. To work through your own values, there are quite a few ways to do this. These are the most effective ways I've found to mine your values. Now, this is from observation of working with clients. It takes a lot of work, so that's why there's quite a few exercises here. Now, I'll link you a video somewhere on the screen where you can click and I'll take you through the values work. But it is, don't underestimate it. You can work through these exercises and it should help you. So, number 2, paths and vision. Our brain needs context of the whole journey. What does success look like in the long run? What does a fulfilling life path look like? This process is pretty challenging because there's lots of uncertainty. You don't really know where you're going to end up. In this stage, it's really important we start exploring paths and we can do that with experiments. Back to Jodie as an example. She had gone through here for 15 years and had all of these missed opportunities to try new things. And the same thing with Joe. Lots of opportunities, 10 years, and had a lot of regret about a lot of this. In this recruiting role, and like we spoke about earlier, he had a dream of creating big impact with people. So we'll come back to that in a bit. So think about, what does the journey look like for you? Articulating your possible paths can help you visualize this. You can think about it like this. You've got your life 1, you can continue on that path, or you can start thinking about an alternative life 2, or life 3 here. Now these can be like different destinations for a holiday. Think about, where is your ideal destination? Now for Jodie over here, she had life 1 over here, continue like she's always done for the last 15 years, but she will continue to get what she's always got. Or she can go for this. And this is what we started to flesh out. Now, I really remember this quite viscerally, and this really felt like a pipe dream at the time. And she used those words. Again, we will return later. Now, number 3, version 2. We want to start thinking about who you want to become. Just as a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, we can change ourselves too. We can start thinking about the identity we want to adopt. We can start thinking about who must you become to reach your vision from the previous exercise, and what habits and behaviors are needed. So this is you now, version 1, and this is who you want to become, version 2, your future. You might be stuck in this one, and you're trying to figure out who this is. We need to figure, and once you figure this out, we can then figure out how we can do this. The reality is the change happens quite gradually. You don't suddenly shift into version 2. You go through these stages, through version 1, 1.1, 1.2 to 2.0. And what happens is it actually makes it easier, because when you get to version 1.5, you can see that you have made some progress and you reach some milestones, and it makes it easier to accept that it's possible. So I'll give you a quick client reflection. I had a client, Chris, who was really unhappy in multiple areas of life. And this was a really, really difficult starting point, because it was a physical and mental health side, location, and relationships. And he couldn't see a way out, was deeply unmotivated. And we eventually got him to be fitter. He exited toxic relationships and ended up in a new country, which was crazy. And we eventually got him to the point where he's setting up a new life in a new country as version 1.6 moving to version 2, which contains a much bigger goals. And this was really, really cool. Now I'm going to show you one of the shifts that I made. I went for a physique change, and it was actually pretty crazy because the version 1, I really, really hated how I looked, and I just resided to the fact that that was who I was always going to be. My version 1.1, I couldn't imagine being at that last stage, but at the first stage was just about losing weight. And it was really hard, but I was already starting to feel a little bit better, but I definitely wasn't there yet. Now version 1.3 is I could start seeing changes. The weight started to drop at version 1.4, and I started to get into some visual feedback, which really helped with motivation. And then there was a really important moment of version 1.5 where I started getting some comment from some close friends, and that really, really gave me a lot of feel when I was really, getting a bit precarious with my consistency. And then eventually got to these finishing kind of points, which I was really proud of. And it just opened my mind because I tried to do this for like 10, 15 years and I could never do it. So I didn't have the consistency. But I employed all of the things I've done in this whole video to make this work. And the same thing happened with content creation. So I started here. I was terrified of the camera, so much so I actually had a phobia of looking at camera lenses and the little red light that comes on when you start recording. It eventually got to this point where I'd had some content go viral. Yeah, the first area, I was really scared of speaking. And speaking, version 1.1, I'd be speaking in the car to myself. Version 1.2, these were my first videos, which are still up there on TikTok, and I was so embarrassed by them. Then you can see version 1.3 to 1.5 starting to get more comfortable, and then started to upgrade the production quality, and then eventually get into version 2 where it started to have some viral videos and connecting with my audience. That's a little bit of incentive for getting your direction right and figuring out how you're going to do that. The problem comes up next. You're all set, but the car won't start. You're not taking any action on this big idea that you're motivated about. This is the next problem I had. So, stage 2, initiating action. You know you need to take action, but why aren't you? The symptoms. You're stuck in research mode. You read books, you buy courses, you watch motivation videos. Symptom 2, you're constantly planning or strategizing. And symptom 3, you've got strong avoidance and procrastination tendencies. If this is you, this is a section that you're going to need to concentrate on. So I want you to imagine you are this person here, and your goals and dreams are over here. You want to get over here. And you think, easy. And someone comes up to you and says, just do it. And you say, okay, I'll do it. So in your mind, you think, I'll just get over here and I'll be over here, easy. But the reality is really, really different. When we zoom in, we realize when we get here, we're actually really, all of these self-doubts start to flood our system, and we start thinking about this. We experience fear, uncertainty, self-doubt, lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, overwhelm, anxiety, stress. So we start avoiding, which leads us into our next mental trap, number 2, the fake action trap. This is where we start to do lots of activities like reading books, acquiring more knowledge. It's all about, and it's reinforcing this shelter to be on this side and not going across the bridge. Years will pass you by, as it did for me. It was 14 years before I started posting content, and that's something I really wanted to do and start running my own thing. And so you end up doing this. You're watching YouTube, buying books. You've got bookshelves of books, TikTok, Netflix, and you're just taking a whole bunch of these fake actions. You feel like you're doing work, but you're not really. This is something I would see a lot with clients. Many were stuck in the knowledge acquisition state. And I call this intelligence flattery. It makes you feel really prideful that you understand all of this new knowledge and you're consuming more and more. They experience a lot of shiny object syndrome. And then at the first sign of discomfort in whatever this new object that they're project that they're working on, they jump to the next one, and it just goes on in a continuous cycle. They have a lot of pride in crafting a plan that they never execute. So this big elaborate, the number of times I've seen these big flowcharts and mind maps that no one ever executes, crazy. And a lot of people are forever building portfolio projects and never going to market and actually speaking to real potential customers that could potentially reject them. Looking for perfect job descriptions, but never actually reaching out to the people with the jobs or applying. And perfecting their work, but never shipping it and showing it to the world. So these are some of the fake actions. This is a big problem. Just spending time watching motivation videos online like this. So you need to get away from this. Otherwise, you will end up like this with a lot of regret and lots of missed opportunity. This, now, just to hammer this home, this was me. Look at this date, 2006. I didn't start posting until 2019. 13 years. Every day, I really wanted to make my own YouTube video. Since then, since the first day I created it, and I couldn't do it. It was because of all of these reasons. And eventually I broke it. And have not looked back since. I also did a lot of work on TikTok and Instagram. It has totally changed my life. We want to get over here. We have to figure out a way to get across this bridge. So how do you break your patterns and start taking action? So there's 3 immediate focus points we can help you get started. But first, a quick reflection. Are you doing lots of research and you've got lots of half-started projects? Are you frequently getting overwhelmed? Are you always making excuses? But first, why is it so much harder than it should be? This is what happens. We feel this effect, like the spotlight is on us at the very point that we're trying to cross the bridge. What's going on here? Well, we can look at the emotional energy side of things. On the surface, a simple, straightforward action, just step forward, becomes really difficult. What's going on? If we look at our whole energy chart, most of it is emotional saturation. It's the fear we are experiencing, and then we experience things like mental fog. The task might only be this, right? Just to step forward onto this little rope bridge, but we can't do it. This is a way to visualize what is going on in our brain and why we can't do a simple task when we approach the edge. How can we resolve this? Well, we need to think about what would actually work. What would work is something like this. We still have a fear element, but it is a minority of our total emotional energy. Most of the energy is on task and just a healthy amount of fear here. But how do we do this given we've got a situation where we need to cross the rope bridge? Well, this is the next concept. How do you get started and take your first steps when it feels risky? Because this is the problem. It feels risky. Yeah, if we go back to here. Or we can start approaching it with something I like to call psychological safety. I have a concept I call Ollie the octopus. If we think about how an octopus moves, it moves like this. It doesn't jump across. It reaches one tentacle and then another and then another, and it slowly works its way across, eventually. In the early stages, it is trying to gather data. It makes progress, but keeps risk low. If it loses a tentacle, it will still survive. The rest of the body and the brain remains safe on this side. So we have this quite optimal situation where it's managing safety, but still maintaining progress. And it allows the octopus to keep making progress like this. It only learns when the tentacle is moving, taking action. It doesn't think about moving the tentacle. It's there. If you actually, I've got a video on this, which I'll link to you in a moment, but you'll see this where they're constantly moving and learning about what is on the other side. How can we do this in our little situation with the rope bridge? Well, we can do something like this, where we can have a test rope here. We still have things to learn, like balancing on the rope, but we don't have this maximal fear. We can get used to this, then we can manage that emotional energy. Now the key here is to design psychologically safe steps. We want to make it feel psychologically safe, so no overwhelm. It will feel difficult, but it's just not overwhelming. And we do a first tentacle approach. I've got a full breakdown of how to do this in my video called Ollie the Octopus, and you'll find it here. It's quite a few months old. Now, number 2, we need to make your actions doable. We need to create a plan that actually works. So many people get this wrong. It is easy to make elaborate and really grand plans, but we overlook the reality of implementing that plan. Complexity increases overwhelm, right? So a lot of people increase, to make plans look even more amazing, they increase the complexity. So what's going wrong here? So what do we need to do here? We actually need to simplify to reduce your overwhelm. We're trying to work with overwhelm, not creating really perfect plans. Now, again, I've got a full training module on this. Again, I will link lots of videos here. Otherwise, this video will go way too long. So we can look at this chart here. You may have seen a chart similar to this. Exposure to what you're learning. If you go too aggressively in too short a time, you end up with too much. It feels overwhelming and you get anxious. It's very paralyzing. If you do too little over a lot of time, you won't be motivated, and you will feel too little reward, and it'll be boring. So there's like an optimal point here. Now, if you create bigger and bigger plans, you are going up here. You're going into the overwhelm zone, and that's not good. Now, you might be asking, why do we do it to ourselves? Why do we make things so much worse for us? It's kind of like a self-torturing mechanism. I want to introduce you to a concept I call the strategist and the performer. So the strategist is in the preparation stage, right? This is on the planning side. And the performer is in the execution stage when you're implementing the plan. So the strategist develops a plan for the performer. I want you to imagine you've got this split personality. You've got these two people in your head. The strategist is a highly skilled thinker, and they're always thinking and developing these plans. A good job for them is making sure the performer can perform. Now, the performer is a doer. They have to manage their emotions in the moment. They're affected by the weather and the environment when they're actually executing. And a good job is executing what the plan says. Yep, so this is the basis of it. Oh, I've just seen, you can't quite see here, but we'll keep going. So here's an example. In the planning stage, here's Roger Federer with a coach, and then here's Roger Federer in the performing stage. So I want you to think about this with your projects. Now, let's look at the tendencies of what actually happens in the real world and what I tend to observe and what I experienced. Strategist creates these really complex plans that look good on paper. I mean, I was the worst for this. I create these big, elaborate charts on my whiteboards, in spreadsheets, which look really amazing. And I remember just sitting there feeling really relaxed and creating these things that they looked like circuit boards for some kind of complex electronic device. And they get frustrated when the performer doesn't follow the plan. The performer, on the other hand, gets overwhelmed by complex plans. When they're taking the plan and they need to execute it, they're just questioning how complex it is. And they get frustrated when the plan is really difficult. So they end up procrastinating. They just go on YouTube and start scrolling. And so this is what we think we're capable of doing in the planning stage. But this is the reality. Why? Because we're experiencing those emotions in the moment. We need to focus on helping this person here. This is the really important kind of element to focus on. But we never think about this. One way around this is we can create something I like to call simple rules. And we need to create simple rules for the performer, because they just need a simple set of step 1, step 2, step 3. They need to be clear and precise actions with very, very, very high clarity. Low mental effort so that they're easy. And it solves a bottleneck in your plan. Really, really focused. Moves you in the direction of your goals. A critical action. And it acts as a catalyst for a series of behaviors. I'll give you a few examples in a moment. So guidance. Rule wording should be concise, kind of less than 12 words. And it does not describe or explain the problem. The rule should result in the desired behavior, a critical action. So this will all make sense in the example. So example, you want to write more. The critical action is you want to see words on your page. The bottleneck is you just have too many ideas. You've got lots of writing ideas and you're getting overwhelmed. And you start planning around how you're going to flesh everything out into a perfect order and structure. And it just gets overwhelming for you. The simple rule is to open a Word document and press the keys. You can really rely on the performer to figure out what to do. And you'll start writing some words. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a client I worked with. We'll call her Helen. Now, she wanted to start writing and she wanted to put herself out there. And it was difficult because it was quite a sensitive topic. So she wanted to really get her message out there. And this was in blog format and on social media. And this was a really difficult task for her. Her original plans totally overwhelmed her. Setting up a blog, setting up a website, Instagram profile, TikTok profile. And this completely caused her to shut down. So what we did is we focused on really simplifying it. So she had an easier way to start, and we gave her some very simple instructions, and it was to open the Google document and to start typing. In the early days, I actually helped her. So we actually got in session. We would share a document, and I would help her type out some of the first few words just to get her started, because she had such intense writer's block. And this really worked. She's now got a blog. She's now got a blog live. She's got a fairly good social media following. Now, it is about a sensitive topic, so I won't be sharing that. Number 3, avoidance and excuses. This is where we get to the edge, and just as we're about to go, there's nothing else to do other than to do it. And then we just scream, I want to get away. And we say, I need to clean the house. So why do we make excuses? We only experience max fear at the edge. So anticipation of pain is imminent. And your brain is really desperate to escape this. It does what is necessary to get out of it. Your brain is simply trying to survive. And it's by design, so that's okay. Escape. Any type of threat to survival breeds a need to escape. Our brain signals pain to try and get us out of this situation. And then it will use all known tactics to evade capture. And that is why your excuse system is so powerful and can really, really take over. So don't underestimate the level of sophistication of your brain. So just to summarize, the excuses, despite having a plan, it makes you want to sabotage because of how your brain is wired. And we have this peak fear at the edge, and your brain is desperate to escape. Focus on who you want to become. We go back to stage 1, think about your direction, think about who you want to become. Now, I'll give you an example. We had a client, Mark, really wanted to focus on his working out and career progression and training. But he constantly made excuses every day. He'd set a plan, but evaded it. And he wanted to do things in his lunch break. So this was pretty tricky. Now, he was really frustrated because no matter what plan he set up, he'd just wriggle out of it at the last minute. So we'll return to Mark's problem once I explain a few concepts here, and I'll explain how we solve it. We have a few particular advantages with how we can get past this. The same excuses always show up. The excuses are really weak, right? If you actually call them out, you can see how weak they are. Because it relies on the absence of any counter. You don't fight it, but right, when you're standing at the edge, it's in your interest to try and get away. So you don't even question it. So how do we build a system to neutralize it? It's not easy, but these are some guidelines you can follow. You want a clear and precise counter argument. It is a bit like having a kind of like a script you can say when you're about to jump off as to why it makes sense to jump off and that is safe. It has to align with your long-term identity. For example, you want to jump into the water. You've got to think, I want to be a swimmer. I want to be swimming. That means I've got to be in the water somehow. Because it may sound simple and obvious, but in that moment, we often don't do it. It's good to have multiple counters, right? Because one for one often doesn't work. You need quite a few. So in this case, I would say, I usually suggest around 3 to 1. 3 reasons for one excuse. It must be done away from the edge, right? Not doing the strategist side. You can't wait to make this stuff up at the edge because your brain will override you. So an example with Mark. We had this excuse. He wanted to go to the gym during his lunch break. So the excuse he made is, I need this time to continue my work and finish my pending emails. If I don't work in this hour, I won't be ready for my evening calls. So the counter is 90% of time, you use this hour to watch television or eat. That was his reality. And that is, I'm taking my work phone to the gym in case there's anything urgent that comes through. And exercising is better than any drug in the market, and it will make you more productive at work. So this helped him. This helped him counter that feeling that he wanted to follow the excuse. And the same thing elsewhere. But you can pause this and read through. We need to neutralize the excuses. They are nearly always unique to you. So every time I've done this exercise with a client, we have really interesting excuses. They're never the same. And the counters will be specific to the person. It often won't make sense to anyone else who reads it because it's about what you care about and what you value. So in this case, feeling and staying young was important. This is really difficult, very difficult. So hopefully you're getting a theme here that none of this is particularly easy. You have clarity, you know which direction you're heading in, and you feel excited about the journey that you're about to go on. You can start taking action. Maybe you're gaining some momentum, but at some random moment, something in life knocks you completely off track and you don't know how to right yourself, or you try and right yourself, but you can't. And then it causes you to quit and stop, and then you don't return to this for another couple of years. This is why stage 3 is really important, all about mental resilience. The symptoms here. You quit when things get hard. You sometimes overdo it and then you end up burning out and then quitting. And symptom 3, you experience a life curveball. Something in your personal life hits you and then you just can't right yourself. You can't get back into your flow. So next up is mental trap 3, what I call the recovery paradox. After a setback, you often intend to push harder to try and catch up with the lost time. Does that ring a bell? This doesn't work most of the time. Why? So why do we do this? Well, you feel behind, so you try and get back on the horse as quickly as possible, and that's what this image is there for. Sometimes you feel a bit guilty because you've had this period of time where you've not made any progress. I would constantly push, so much so I would get sick and it would knock me out, and sometimes I've actually ended up in hospital when that's happened. Now, I notice my most driven and ambitious clients will often experience this. They feel so bad for the lost time. They overcompensate and overdo it and eventually get sick. And they have similar, they'd have similar symptoms to me. So we need to resolve this. And there are a few ways. Now, there are a few ways to get to right yourself after a fall that are really sustainable. But first, a quick reflection. When setbacks happen, what is your recovery plan? Do you have systems to get back on track when you're overwhelmed, stressed, or burnt out? How can you become more resilient so that nothing can stop you? Here are 3 immediate focus points. Number 1, recovery routines. Imagine you finally got some momentum, okay? And you're in a rhythm until something happens. It feels like this. You hit, a wall appears out of nowhere, and life hits you with some kind of curveball. You go there, and the next thought, you have a break, and then you think, right, this is what I intend to do. Quickly get back up, and then get back into the flow. I heard this story time and time again. Now, I have experienced this, right? So I'm very familiar with this, and I hear this from lots of clients, and they actually do this. So this is what actually happens. They try, and then it fails. Bad, and it stays that way. And this is not something that can be sustained. And sometimes, even just the thought of trying to pick yourself up looks like this. It feels like an insurmountable wall. And so then they don't even bother. A client example, we'll use Jodie because this was quite a big issue for her. And she's an extremely hard worker and had very high expectations of herself. Working full-time and had really stressful periods from her full-time job, which made her push harder in her home projects. And this was a big transition for her to change career. Now, historically, she would push and push and push on her own projects, and then she'd eventually get sick and have to take a few months off. So what we did is we focused on building a more sustainable recovery plan after she'd been beaten down with these stressful periods with work. And what it looks like is this. You have a break. Now, we want some kind of recovery routine. It is a sustainable rehabilitation process, a bit like this, when you recover from some kind of operation. We want it to be safe and sustainable. It gets us back to the target place we want to be, but we do so in a gradual process that actually makes sense for the body and mind. Now, this can vary from person to person. That's why you need a dedicated recovery routine built for you. So take some time to at least to think about this. Most people don't even think about this at all. And so they end up sabotaging themselves. Be strategic with this. Now, if you want some help, I'll be doing a video on this too about some frameworks of how to do this. Again, I can kind of give you some examples from different clients I've worked with because their shape of recovery routine looks really different. Depends on the person, depends on the situation that they're trying to recover from. Now, when life gets really chaotic, sometimes everything can become too much. So you can't work on your own personal projects. Have you experienced that? So number 2, emotional management. So we're going to talk about how to manage emotions when you're trying to do these big changes, because it's really important. Many ignore how emotions affect performance. Given my upbringing, I never really thought about how my emotions affect performance. I just thought you have a bunch of instructions and you just do it. You don't think about anything and you don't focus on how you're feeling either. That was a mistake for me because I would go through cycles of getting really sick and not understanding why. You need to understand your patterns here. Why? Because it allows you to build systems to support yourself. And this was critical for me because I kept breaking at stage 3. I just didn't know stage 3 was needed. So I want to talk to you about a concept I call peak emotional events. This has been a game changer for some clients who really needed it. So many clients struggle with this one. I'll explain this in a minute, and there'll be a full training module coming soon. But I'll give you an overview. So we can think about when something happens in your life that is really big. It could be a personal thing, something to do with family. It could be a big presentation or a job interview. And what happens is, this is when it happens, on this day here. But the emotional drain, it peaks here, but it actually affects you in daily life. And for a number of days or hours before and a number of days and hours after. But we often don't take this into account. Have you ever felt that let's say you've got a big event happening on a Wednesday that you can't focus on Tuesday, you just want to take some time out on Thursday and Friday. And so it essentially affects 4 days of your week. And it can sometimes look like this. Let's say you've got a job interview here. This is your peak emotional event. But the affected days look like this. Now, we intuitively understand this, but there's a problem here because when you're trying to work on these big, ambitious projects of yours, and it could be a change of career or building a side business, you can become really sensitive to your level of focus. So what is the effect on your focus? Well, what happens is during a peak emotional event, you can see a curve similar to this. Your focus is fine. And then as you get towards your peak emotional event, as the emotions get higher, your focus starts to drop. And it will happen here. Your focus drops below a functional threshold. This is where I would say, and I experienced this when I tried to build my own thing, I realized I just lost my creativity at this point here. And then it doesn't return to you here. So you might have a period of 1 day where your peak emotional event happens, but you can't think for that whole week. So it can sometimes write off a whole week for you. Some people are more affected than others. It just so happened that I found I was really sensitive to this. So if I had a big event or something where I had to show up in a certain way, somewhere in the middle of the week, I just couldn't focus for the days before and days after. Or if I was away for a weekend, it could be with friends or family, I should really struggle getting back into the flow of things. When I had a really high stakes project to get back to work in, my headspace wasn't there. I really noticed this when I was trying to create content. The quality of my content dropped dramatically and I just couldn't pick it up. And I wondered why. So this is what it can look like. You've got your emotional curves and then you've got your corresponding focus curves. I'll be going into this more in a video which will be coming soon. But this becomes an even bigger problem when you start stacking emotional events because they don't just happen once. You will get continual emotional events. What does that look like? Well, let's have a look. So you have one emotional event here, then you have another one here, then you have another one here, which soon comes after this, and you have another one here. This is going to cause an absolute mess. And I have seen people's calendars and it can really look like this. What does it do to your energy and focus? Well, it looks something like this. So for this whole period of time, which could be a whole month, you feel like your focus is all down here. Now, when I've worked with clients and we pull up their calendar, they say, oh, over these next 2 months, I'm going away here, I've got a family do here, I've got a work do here, and it looks like 1 day here, 2 days here. But you don't realize the collateral effect or the collateral damage, of all of these events happening within that month. Then we look at, okay, so how much focus energy? So they would look at their monthly calendar and think that it's not going to be a problem. Like they've got all of these free days. But when we then do an analysis of the likely impact on their emotional state, they realized they had no free 100 like strong creative days in between. Now, sometimes you can't avoid some of these peak emotional events, but there are many that you can. Sometimes that they're social events or going away, or there can be some events that you can that are negotiable. This is life. We have to find a way to do this. Now, if we can remove it, great. But if we can't, we need a way to manage losing all of this focus and energy. We need a way to deal with this. How can we do that? So this comes on to number 3, defensive systems. This is a really, really key one and has allowed a lot of clients I've worked with able to weather storms. Now, let's look at this. So you might think, okay, let's go for an adventure. It's nice and sunny. Most people just leave their progress completely up to chance. They just think, okay, it's sunny today, let's go for an adventure. And they don't think about this day, yeah? And this could be a period of time, by the way. This is just an illustration. Most people don't have a plan for when this day comes. They just plan for the sunny days because everyone's got kind of rose-tinted glasses at this time. The reality is, any ambitious project, remember at the beginning, if you want to build something really ambitious, it's going to last many days or weeks or months even. So in this case, with this, if you want to go for a quick weekend little yacht trip, yes, it could be sunny for the whole weekend. If you're trying to go transatlantic, you are definitely going to encounter some kind of storms. This is inevitable. You will have a period like this. What are you doing to prepare yourself for it? So, defensive systems. What do you do when a storm hits you? You need a system. Like with a real boat, you have anchors. You can batten down the hatches, right? You close up shop, you stop sailing, you pull the sail down so you don't capsize. You might not make so much progress on those days, but you don't expect to. And then you go below deck and you can watch some movies and drink some nice hot chocolate and cookies. So what is the equivalent in real life? We can create some what I like to call defensive playbooks. These are kind of practical playbooks. It's not just theory. This is what you actually do when the storm hits you. Now, this has been really tricky. It's something that I've had to work on really hard because storms would hit me. I would get knocked off. Storms would hit me and it would completely take me off the rails. And then I'd get sick. Now, I needed a way to save myself in a situation. This may or may not sound fairly easy and obvious, but if it sounds a bit complex and a bit kind of overdoing it, think about this. You actually already have a defensive playbook. When you get sick, you execute your defensive playbook. You might take time off work. You spend time on a sofa. You have lemon and honey and ginger, and you drink soup. So this is like a defensive playbook for when you get sick or you get the flu. So we can have defensive playbooks when we get really stressed or curveballs start to hit us in some way. I often see this when I'm working longer term with clients because they've got a really, really big, ambitious long-term project. We will start in a sunny mode, and I know for sure they will inevitably need a defensive system. And then eventually we go through a period where the clouds turn really dark and then the storm comes in. And so we do a lot of prep for the defensive playbook. And a lot of times clients won't realize, or it's hard for them to imagine how useful it's going to be. But as soon as the storm hits, we have to execute. And they are so thankful that they have the defensive playbook on hand, which we've practiced as well. So you've got to drill it too. Just like a fire drill. So if a fire happens, you don't want to be learning where the fire exits are when the fire is there. We often don't like to do fire drills, but we do it to gain familiarity. And often we do it when it's really sunny. Just like this, we need to do this too. Now, so yeah, remember this. You will encounter bad weather at some point. It will happen. Now, coming back to Anne, we had to create defensive playbooks. She was working on some really ambitious projects, and we had special weekly routines when it was set up when life was really against her. And she had some very trying periods. And so she had some really challenging periods in life. So we built some defensive playbooks that would allow her to operate in a lower energy state to get her through that so that she could build momentum after that when the sun came out again. So here it looks like this. You have checklists. We create these playbooks, have very simple checklists, back to simple rules from earlier. And we practice it. Another quick client example, Jody. We focused on building sustainable recovery periods, right, from earlier when she got knocked off of her plans. We designed defensive playbooks to manage her workload, and included, this was an interesting one, included some detailed boundary setting scripts. She was getting a lot of heat from some of her colleagues, and who were very demanding. Her job was very demanding. So we actually, part of her defensive playbook, we actually had scripts that she could say when she needed to say no and put boundaries up. Because in the moment when she was feeling low on energy, she would be more inclined to say yes to things that she couldn't deliver. We then focus on optimizing her project work during these peak emotional events. So we looked at how we can get the biggest steps forward in some of her personal projects. For example, making sure some follow-up emails were going up to the relevant people to help her move the career, rather than these big kind of long articles that she had to write or anything like that. Too heavy load. Could we do some smaller tasks in that period that would still make her progress during these difficult periods? So you have clarity, you have your direction, stage 1. You can take action and you don't make so many excuses, stage 2. You can now manage a crisis and bounce back when you get derailed, stage 3. But you're struggling with being consistent in the long term. This is up next. Stage 4, long-term consistency. I know that you know your success depends on your consistency. Consistency is everything. So symptom 1, you start strong, but you lose momentum. Symptom 2, life somehow pulls you off track and keeps you off track. There are so many ways that can happen. Symptom 3, you struggle to balance multiple life priorities and life demands. So mental trap 4, the willpower fallacy. Most people think consistency is about pushing 100% all the time. But this often leads to burnout, boredom, distraction, and guilt, and it's completely not sustainable. Why do we do this? Well, we observe others' output and we just copy them. And it often requires a level of discipline beyond our current limits. Don't get me wrong, you can get there, but given what you've practiced in your journey, and it causes a very high likelihood of burning out. New routines and habits are very difficult to integrate with your lifestyle. And we have no systems to help us stay on track. So a quick reflection here. When motivation fades for you, what systems keeps you making progress? Do you have any? How will you stay accountable knowing your own past track record? Yeah. What I mean here is, if you've got a bad track record, how are you going to do it differently? How are you going to stay accountable? So how do you build long-term consistency? Here are 3 immediate focus points for you. So number 1, flexible routines. Most think consistency is about having these really rigid plans and habits. But what happens is you end up with this. You end up with broken glass. We want to be more like this because life is unpredictable and flexibility is key. Trees can weather many, many storms because they can flex with the wind. So number 1, flexible routine. You want a routine that can adapt with your level of energy. Try and create multiple gears like a bike, right? So if you've got multiple gears on a bike, it doesn't matter what hill you're on. Whether you're going downhill, you can go in a high gear. If you're going uphill, you're going to really low gear and you'll spin fast, but you'll keep making progress. It means that you won't ever fall off the bike. Now, I've got another video which explains the technical side of how to build this up. I call it upper and lower limits. Check the video. I'll try and link it somewhere here. But it talks about this. The idea, simply, is that when you set a goal, that should be your upper limit. You want to focus on what can be your lower limit. Let's say you're working out. 5 times a week is your upper limit. You probably won't be able to keep that up forever. What is your lower limit? It could be once or twice a week. Keep that going. Now check the video. Ensure your defensive playbooks are prepared and practiced. Stage 3, mental resilience. You've got to make sure that you are familiar with them, because if you deploy them when you've never used them before, you will feel really uncomfortable. It will feel really difficult to execute. Number 2, habit integration. This is a really important one. Most people focus on short-term execution. They can't sustain it. And what happens is you don't want to sustain it by the end because it's so horrible. Whatever program you've put yourself on, you just don't want to sustain it anymore. We often underestimate the challenge of integration of your new habit with your existing lifestyle. This is a really, really, really interesting trap that I see a lot of people fall into. How can we visualize this? So I want you to imagine this. You're going about this. This is your existing lifestyle. This is the energy to sustain your current lifestyle. And on this day, you decide to start your new habit. What happens? You initiate it for a period of time. You bump up the energy. And then here, you reach the end of a program or something. And then you suddenly drop to zero. The number of times I've seen this. For example, when people start, they buy these fitness meals or these weight loss program meals and workouts, and they go really hard for 30 days or 90 days or 75 hard or things like that. And they end up breaking at the end and they just revert back to old routine. What's going on? Well, there's no integration, right? You've got these two parallel things going on, not integrated, and no thought about how to do that. So how do you do a transition? What we can think about is this. When you introduce a new habit, you have this peak and that will feel extremely hard. But what we want to do is over time, we want to start thinking about integrating it here and raising up your energy and then meeting at some point further along the line. We can look at two stages. This is the initiation stage. So that could be your first 30 days. And then we have this other period, which is integration. That could be the next 30 days. Now, this is something I try and do with nearly every client. Now, a lot of people don't like focusing on this because technically it feels like you're making less progress because you're slowing down. But what we're doing is we're actually trying to figure out what we need to do to make this sustainable over time. It's difficult because your energy and motivation dips at this period. And we also need to allocate it to the blending of your habits with your lifestyle. But this is really key to making a new thing stick in the long term. Over time, habits do become easier. So with this, of the new actions within your new habits, what are the easier ones to integrate into your existing lifestyle? This is classic when I see this with nutrition and working out, if you can make it a little bit easier. And sometimes you might need to remove some of the really hard ones. Now, I see this with lots of clients. If they've got children, it's really difficult to do things. Lifestyle is really difficult to manage. So we have to find kind of compromises there. And we have to kind of pick and choose the ones that are more likely to be sustainable. And that's why you get a drop, because sometimes you will lose the effectiveness of the original habit program, but it is more sustainable. So think about this: initiation and integration. The last one, number 3. This is probably the most important one for long-term sustainability. Anchor points. Most rely on motivation to keep showing up time and time again. So you just hope that your motivation is there. But consistent people expect motivation to dip. This is a key point. So what happens is when your motivation dips, you just leave, right? We don't want that. So how can we prevent that? Like an anchor in a boat, anchor points keep you in place during these dips. They hold you in place. Environment and people are really key to this process. That's a little bit of a teaser here. Now, I'll do a video on this, going into a lot of depth with how to do this. Because actually this is from a practical perspective quite challenging. But it's heavily guided by stage 1, right? And dictated by your environment and people. Why? Because we want to be around people and the environment who have shared values with you. Then that helps anchor you to the right actions that you need to take when your motivation dips. So examples can be, so environment. If you create rituals around this, so you go to a regular gym, yeah, and that could be by yourself to start with. Group accountability, people doing the same type of thing as you, or believe in the same cause as you, or have the same growth values as you. And maybe you've got a coach who wants the best for you and is pushing you in the direction that you want to go in. So you can have versions of this. Notice all of these are going in the same direction. Yeah, the direction is the same. But they all keep you accountable, whether it's self-guided, in a group, you've got an accountability partner, or you've got a coach, mentor, and instructor. So some examples: classes, communities, clubs. Those are all examples of people who are directionally the same as you and will keep pulling you along that direction when you dip. Yeah. You can think about these kind of anchor ropes here for these tents. Now, over time, keep adapting your environment and add anchor layers. So let's say you go to the gym And then you have a gym buddy and you meet someone there, and then you start going to classes together. So you have these layers here. Maybe you are building a side business. Find other people who are building side businesses. Stay accountable with them. Have discussions with them. Join communities. Work with a coach. And you don't even have to work with a coach really regularly. You can do it quite intermittently, because that can be one of your longer distance anchor points to make sure you're doing it quarterly. A little task for you to do now is identify one anchor point. It could be a goal check-in with yourself, a monthly meetup event. So I go to some of these in my city, or a group or community, online community. Remember, life is really unpredictable. So you've got to be adaptable and have that destination locked in, and then you can quickly mobilize and pivot around that. So a quick reflection. Can you adjust your routine when life gets messy? What external anchors will hold you accountable when you're tempted to quit? We all have been through that. I've been through this many, many times. Are you with the right crowd? If you're not with the right crowd, and this can sometimes be difficult, because if you've got a certain set of friends and you're starting to do something new, they may be swimming in the other direction. And that may not be a problem when you're motivated, but when you're not motivated, they're pushing in a different direction. For example, if you want to do some project work at the weekend and everyone wants to go out or do something like that, you're unlikely to get that space and time to do it. So you want to think about, are you going in a similar direction? And sometimes it will require you to change different groups of people that you're with if you need that accountability. If you made it this far, well done. You might want to find out where you are in each of these 4 pillars. Now, I've actually got an assessment here which you can take. There'll be a link in the description below. You can take it and you can find your relative scores for each of these. Around a 60% score for each of these is a fairly good place. That's when I've seen people be able to stick to their parts. I ideally want to try and get people to around 80% for each of these, if possible. And that's where we start to see really strong results. So I hope that's been useful for you, and good luck. See you in the next one.